Hello friends, this is Fox Nival Studios. Today we are here with new chapter. What if Naruto have a power of time manipulation? Before starting story, please subscribe our channel. Story starts. He ducked his head deftly, allowing the spitball from behind him to go over his head and land on someone else. Who did that? Naruto's face was that of a person who was bored out of his mind. He used his thumb and pointed it behind him lazily. Kiba did it.
Sakura got up from her place beside the Uchiha, stomped up the space between the rows of students until she was beside the blonde boy who looked very disinterested still. Without warning, she proceeded to give the Uzumaki a knuckle sandwich.
Attempted to. Naruto simply leaned back and the rosette's knuckled hand struck the desk with a loud thud. The girl yelped and pulled her hand back sharply and placed the back of it against her mouth to suck on it in an effort to dull the pain. Naruto nearly sighed long enough to deflate. She had never hit him yet, and the way things were going, she never will. This time around, she couldn't complain that he let her hit the desk by trying to hit him. That was dumb. In the back of his mind though, he could only muse about how old this was getting. Really, really old. Do you think I'm an idiot? Stop lying. It came from your direction. The girl shrieked in a small effort to regain some composure and respect. I said it was the Inuzuka. But I don't care if you believe me or not. Just leave me alone. The boy said with a roll of his eyes. The girl huffed and went back to her seat crossly, upset that her attempt at some justice went unfruitful. Everyone was minding their own business. This was nothing new. It was a constant that Kiba would try to prank Naruto, but it never worked. In fact, Naruto was never surprised. If the worst came to worst, and it usually did, someone else would get it instead. Naruto was an enigma. He never got caught, he never got surprised or frightened. He always told the truth, never lying. Above all, he was never lazy, just bored, emanating utter disinterest in everything that took place around him. There was something to him that no one knew. Iruka came into the classroom and conducted the daily lesson as usual.
He wrote on the chalkboard and gave his lectures. And as expected, as Naruto had done every day, he took notes of all that was taught, being a teacher's dream of a perfect listening student. As 3 p.m. struck, everyone filed outside to the taijutsu mat, today being Friday. It tended to take place on Friday, so if and when they got injured they could heal over the weekend and be well enough to return to school come the following Monday.
Today was no different. The students gathered around the large square mat under the expansive shade of the two large trees that grew nearby. It was slightly padded to soften landings when the students fought each other. Anything else, one could say it was unusually smooth. It was said that this was to promote better fighting capabilities in slippery places, but it was a well-known fact the mat was replacing a coarser version after Kiba had practically sanded off someone's face on it when he was angry one day. The victimized boy is now going to a civilian school these days. 27 students stood around, crowding the mat while waiting. As expected, Iruka made his way through the students and stood at the center of the mat, waiting on the students to settle down. They soon did, knowing that the sooner they got this out of the way, the sooner they could go home and do whatever they pleased for 2 days. Alright, it's time for taijutsu, Iruka announced, looking over the students. It will be between those as I see fit. I won't pit weaker students against someone who's excellent in it, as usual. But be prepared for next week. You all know that the genin exams are next week, and if you know you need some extra work, then do it. I'll let free challenges go first. After that, I'll tell you who goes against whom. The civilians challenged each other and made some small bets on the side on who would win. All too soon, it was the rookies, colorful people remaining. Those were Shino Aburame, Choji Akamichi, Ino Yamanka, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Shikamaru Nara and Naruto Uzumaki. The 9 did not make a move to challenge each other. They were the best in the class and they all knew who was the best in taijutsu. It was the pecking order. It was almost as if they had their own society and social classes and each knew who they could beat, who they could match in strength and who they would lose against. Iruka knew this as well as them, and explained why they waited. There were 9 of them. It was inevitable that one wouldn't fight or they would fight twice. Iruka would match them up so it would be fair, in a way. Hyuga Hinata and Yamanaka Ino, Iruka stated to the crowd, almost as an order. The 2 aspiring kunoichis came to the mat and bowed to each other. Naruto closed his eyes. They'll run to each other, Ino being faster because she has more confidence. Ino will try to punch Hinata's right cheek, but then she'll deflect it with her left hand and hold onto it. Hinata will feint a tenketsu jab at Ino's throat, but when the Yamanaka tries to avoid that, Hinata will disable Ino's captured arm with a jab at the shoulder. Because it's so painful to her, she'll forfeit. Hinata will apologize a lot while blushing before fixing her arm, and then Sasuke and I will fight. Naruto opened his eyes to watch what he had thought play out before Iruka called out again. Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. HN. Forfeit. The class started laughing at Naruto, Sakura being the loudest. He's afraid of Sasuke-kun, she catcalled with other students in agreement. I don't have to prove anything to any of you, he grumbled in a bored tone. Somehow, the low volume of his speech rose over the din of the laughter. His tone was a real buzzkill. The laughter ceased. The Uchiha smirked slightly. He's got the right idea. Everyone here is substandard. The only people here up to par are him and the Aburame, and Kiba. Maybe Shikamaru on a good day. The class continued with Shino beating Sakura a bit badly, Shikamaru forfeiting to Choji. Kiba practically destroyed another civilian learner when Iruka called it quits. The students thought he probably did so before he could get into trouble for letting a sparring fight go too far. All right. That's enough, class. You may leave. The students dispersed, going in separate directions to depart for their homes. Iruka beckoned to Sakura and the student who lost to Kiba to follow him to the academy's nurse to patch them up. Best friends paired up, clan heads and orphans went solo, and soon, the area was empty of people.
X equals X equals. The Uzumaki walked along the roadway, noticing the passers-by parting to give him way as to not let the boy even rub on them when they passed. Pretending to not care, he instead looked to the sky in the west before he hurried to his destination. After a brief time of speed walking, his countenance improved when he saw the ramen shop. He quickly parted the privacy flaps before he seated himself on his stool of frequent choice gratefully.
Tuchi Oji-san? Ayame ni-chan? He yelled in the seemingly empty ramen stand. Naruto ni? Came the reply that sounded distant. Coming. A minute later, brunette girl with dark eyes and appeared to be in her late teens came out in a white waitress uniform. Hey, Naruto ni, Ayame said cheerfully. Ayame ni-chan, he greeted in kind. Doing well? Doing well. But, Tu-san isn't too up to it today. Her bright countenance darkened a little. The Uzumaki leaned over the counter conspiratorially and Ayame mirrored the action, with Naruto whispering into her ear. Did you stop him? He whispered discreetly. Yeah. I accidentally burned him badly on his foot so he didn't come to work. So do you know if, he trailed off. Thankfully, no, I heard an Anbu arrested them at midday. They were waiting at the corner. Did you tip off the Anbu or something? The boy asked. No, it was just by chance. Naruto leaned back on his stool. So all is well, that's great news. Except Dad's leg. He's getting some treatment later at the hospital. He could be here tomorrow or the day after. So, I guess it worked out. His face adopted an even look. It's the least I could do. No, it's a good thing you told me early this morning. You could knock a little quieter. Nearly gave me a heart attack. Next time say something while I'm still awake, huh? The girl started chuckling. Hopefully there won't be a next time. He frowned, deep in thought. Her mood soured as well when she thought of her father, getting attacked by the hoodlums at the end of his block. He could have been killed, just like that. We take life for granted. He looked up and saw her face and tried to lighten the gloom that had settled over them. Well, how's about some ramen, huh? I'm starving. She sensed what he was trying to do and smiled a bit as well. Yeah. We have cause for a celebration. This time, we'll both have it. The boy announced that he could treat them both, and that got a laugh from the ramen mistress. It'd be a first. Sure, why not? Easier on the cash flow. She wandered into the kitchen and came back 5 minutes later with 2 large bowls of ramen, one pork and the other vegetable with red peas. She set the pork in front of her customer and the other beside his own. She then came to the other side of the counter where her bowl was and sat beside Naruto. With a quiet-sounding, "Itadakimasu," the pair began to eat in silent contemplation. They had much to be thankful for. X equals Naruto could be found doing sit-ups in his apartment, trying his utmost at one more but failed. He sprawled upon the ground, panting heavily and sweating profusely. Damn. 300's my limit. Now for push-ups. He rolled over onto his chest and started doing push-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As he finished somewhere in the low 200 bracket he collapsed onto his chest, arms feeling like worn rubber. His stamina and biceps had failed him before he could struggle to get another one done. He sighed in resignation. Sit-ups must have drained me. He reached to a nearby chair and pulled himself to his feet before removing the towel laid over the chair's back. He mopped his face with it and wiped his bare upper torso before balling it up and tossing it into the open dirty hamper. It made it inside rimlessly and the boy did a small fist pump in pride. He then made his way to the bathroom to shower and clean himself up. His shower was quick and he was in bed, promptly at 6 p.m. Soon after, he was asleep, tired from his exercise. The boy was anxious to get to bed and rest, eager to get the day over with. At the Hokage's office, a man dressed in red and white robes with a kite-shaped hat with the kanji for fire on it turned off his crystal ball that was focused on Naruto Uzumaki. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, the professor, the god of the shinobi, ceased his monitoring of his grandson. He was not related by blood, rather, they were related by the close bond they shared. It was one of solidarity. Or at least, the old man hoped they still had that. Hiruzen felt like he and the boy had been growing apart for years now. There used to be that wonderful feeling of companionship when the boy was younger. But they started growing apart 3 years ago when the boy turned 10. They were still close, depending on whose opinion you asked for, but not by the older man's standards. Naruto used to be more casual with him, calling him old man and all that. But now, while he called him so now and again, Naruto started behaving more formally. Of late, he had kept a vigil on him, trying to figure out the blonde. There was nothing unusual about him. He was almost completely normal. Almost, being the keyword, Naruto seemed too normal, which in itself was abnormal. He ate at the same time every day, always got around 80% in his academics, and being slightly above average everywhere else, exercised shortly before bed, and he always went to sleep early. This was as normal could get, but for Naruto, he was anything but the sort. Anbu. A ninja wearing an animal mask depicting a boar materialized in front of his desk, at full attention. Boar, watch Naruto Uzumaki until sunrise. Inwardly, the Anbu sighed. He just had to be the one to get the most unremarkable duty in the world. X =X=. It had been a week, and all the students assembled in their classroom promptly at 9. Today were the genin exams and all were nervous, anxious to get it over with. The lesser confident could be seen still studying and the proud were seated, hands crossed. Iruka's class was certainly one that had its own order of society. Naruto had bags under his eyes, indicating a lack of sleep. He had probably spent most of his night studying and training, neglecting to rest his body. The orange jumpsuited boy's head was sagging down while he struggled to stay awake. His body finally gave out and he dozed off, head down on his desk. He slept for an hour which, if he was fortunate enough, would be enough for his revitalizing stamina. At 10 a.m., Iruka and Mizuki walked in, papers in hand. All right. Everyone prepare for the test. The two Chunin teachers stood in front of the class, scrutinizing them. I want you to do your best, and no cheating. Mizuki saw a certain blonde who was apparently sleeping. Someone wake Naruto. Sakura, whose seat placement was beside the Uzumaki, saw this as a golden opportunity, cracked her knuckles. She was about to rap her fist against the sleeping boy's head when the boy woke up with a deep gasp and grabbed her hand at the wrist. 1 hour. He all but screamed at the top of his lungs as he looked around wildly before getting his bearings together. He was stared at by the class, giving him unnerving expressions, but the teachers were not amused. Naruto, prepare for the exam. You shouldn't be sleeping at a time like this. Iruka stated sternly while his fellow Chunin nodding in agreement. The Uzumaki regained his usual, bored to hell demeanor before his eyes closed. Tempted to keep that way. Hi, Iruka-sensei. Iruka nodded once to the boy. All right. Mizuki, help me hand these out. He gestured to the tests. I'll take this half of the class and you take the other half. The two men walked into the center aisle and started handing out the tests from the front to the back and from back to the front, working their way to the far ends of the room. When they had completed their task, they made their announcement. Begin. He took up his pen and wrote in his name. Suddenly, he squinted at the paper, inspecting it in deep scrutiny. It seemed fine but something felt off. Looking around to the teachers to see if any were looking at him, but fortunately, they weren't. He placed his pen back on the paper to ensure that it would not blow away before bringing his hands together under his desk. He formed the ram seal under the desk and very lightly, performed the genjutsu release. Kai, he muttered under his breath. The paper rippled and suddenly, it was shown to have been upside down. This was made clear when he saw that he had written his name where the bottom of the page was. He shook his head as he retook his pen and crossed it out with a straight line. Pretty sneaky genjutsu. All my answers would have been written upside down and in all the wrong places. He turned the paper around, wrote in his name on the proper line, and started to do his test correctly. Who could have done it? Was it Mizuki? He gave me my test. It also could have been during the preparation. While it was being made, someone cast the genjutsu then placed it upside down in the stack. Was it meant for me then, or someone else? He looked around at the teachers. Mizuki was looking at the Nara who was sleeping, presumably already finished with his test. Iruka met Naruto's eyes, both staring. Finally, they broke it off and both returned to their respective tasks. Nah. They handed out the papers in a particular order. And all our seats were pre-arranged for the test from the start. I am sitting in 6th place. It would have been a simple thing to just put my paper 6th from the top, so I got that paper. He put in another answer. One of these teachers, if not both, are out to get me or botch my chances for passing or something. He purposefully put in a wrong answer at the next question. Okay, one more incorrect answer and put in the rest right. He finished his test easily and put his head down on the desk. He remained in deep thought as paranoia started to plague him. After half an hour later, the teachers announced the exam's end and took all the papers before Iruka walked off with them into the back room. He soon returned and shouted at Shikamaru to wake up. After the boy was rudely awakened, or so the Nara himself complained, Mizuki told them to file outside to the taijutsu mat and the aspiring genin all complied with the order. At the taijutsu mat, they all grouped around it with the teachers at the center, waiting for them to speak. When they were assured that they had settled, Mizuki began to speak. This year, the academy is doing something different. Normally, the students would fight each other in taijutsu or even the teachers, but we have found it more reasonable to do the testing in another fashion. This year, you bunch will fight a jonin. What? How the hell are we supposed to fight a jonin? A boy shouted. Most of the other students, particularly the civilian-born ninjas, mumbled and whispered in agreement. Quiet. Iruka shouted. Just listen. When we're done explaining, you'll understand. The students fell silent while someone coughed somewhere in the back. The Chunin instructor started to speak again. It was noticed that students of different strengths fighting would give the stronger an unfair advantage. Like when Kiba took down Roana last week, someone hissed to another. Who said that? Iruka said angrily. Getting no answer, he continued. Also, you're all aspiring genin. In the past when you fought Chunin instructors, we didn't expect you to win, because us Chunin have strength, skill, height, and weight classes above yours. Kiba at the front raised his hand. But this jonin will be an adult, right? Not much of a difference. Why not just you guys after all, Iruka-sensei? Not the case, Inuzuka, Mizuki spoke up. He's 14 and he's your average size. Said teenage Junin came into being out of a swirl of leaves. He was, as mentioned, their height, but he was in Anbu uniform and wore a blank mask that had the kanji for leaf on the forehead. This is the bunch, correct? He asked. Yes, Amino replied, not perturbed for a second. But do you think it is fair to fight with armor? He removed his armor pads and it was discovered that he was wearing a brown vest underneath. He then gave his armor to Mizuki, who strode to the edge of the mat with it and placed it out of easy reach. He will fight you one at a time alphabetically. When he's done with each person, he'll announce your grade, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, the scarred Chunin announced. Any other concerns? What about his mask? Naruto asked, trying to look over the crowd of students. With the mask on, we can't go for face hits. It's still like armor, not flesh. The Anbu Junin performed 3 hand seals in a blur and removed his mask slowly. When he looked up, most of the students gasped. His face is blank. Sakura shrieked. A civilian puked to one side before Naruto spoke up again. For the love of Kami, calm down. It must just be a very strong genjutsu. He obviously isn't allowed to show his face. The aspiring genin looked ashamed for a minute before the Anbu spoke up. I'm ready. Who's the first? The Aburame walked up to the mat. That would be me, Anbu-san. Mizuki and Iruka nodded before the Amino took out his marking sheet. You may begin. The Anbu dashed to Shino with low speeds, bringing himself to fight closer to a genin's level. Almost mechanically, he sent a punch to the Aburame's gut. The glasses-wearing boy sucked his gut in as the punch got him and grabbed the teenager's arm and wrenched it. The Anbu simply went with the arm-wrenching motion and did a roundhouse kick at the Aburame's head. The boy had to release the arm to block his head. Without letting up for a second, the Anbu leapt up with his remaining foot and kicked Shino in the chest. Shino fell to his back and the Anbu righted himself in the air and landed neatly on his own 2 feet. Shino got up quickly and charged the Anbu. Feint kicking with his left knee, he finished with a full-on waist-sweeping kick. The Anbu was prepared for the action and he caught the leg at the knee and twisted the foot savagely. Shino went with the motion and fell to the ground on his front. The Anbu thought for a while. His juniors were weaker than him, of course, and this was his first grading. Were they all better than this, or worse? Was this standard? This could be rectified later, but you'll have an 8. The Anbu dropped the foot and the Aburame started to get to his feet a little shakily. The Anbu held out his hand and Shino took it and heaved himself up. He bowed his head at the Anbu who reciprocated. Shino then walked back to his place under the tree before he sat down. Next. The Anbu said. All the civilian ninja students went one right after another. They all got scores going from 2 to 5. Choji got 7 when his leg started to get twisted before he gave up. Sakura got 6. She quit when she got caught in a painful arm lock. Hinata went next and got a 7 before he got inside her guard, grabbed both of her hands, and kicked away her legs at the ankles. Kiba went in soon after and got a 9. He got pinned under the ANBU's weight with his arm bent behind him, wrist touching his upper back. Shikamaru put in a little effort into his bout and got a 6 when the Anbu swept his legs out from under him. Civilians went again now. This time, they were fewer of them, so Sasuke didn't have long to wait. The Uchiha smirked to himself. It would be a boon to get a chance to test his prowess and how much he'd grown against an Anbu. If he was this young, this Anbu must have an extraordinary amount of talent and skills. He was probably holding himself back so much it wasn't even funny. Like, Itachi. Alright. Uchiha Sasuke, you're up next, Iruka ordered. About time. He walked up to the mat, ignoring the squeals of his fangirls. He stood across from the Anbu and observed him. That faceless thing he has going on feels intimidating. No wonder the civilian scores are so pathetic. They must have been scared to touch him. He entered the stance for the interceptor fist created by his clan and waited. Hajime, Mizuki announced. Both teens ran at each other quickly to strike at the other. The Anbu, being faster, crossed the halfway point first and reached the Uchiha. He used his acquired momentum and sent a blurred fist at Sasuke. The boy countered it by grabbing it at the wrist with his left hand and pulled the Anbu forward. In the same motion, he attempted to elbow the Anbu in the invisible nose, pulling him into it. The Anbu was prepared and ducked it, bending his head backward. The elder then planted his left leg behind the Uchiha and pulled him along with him, tripping Sasuke backward. The boy started to fall but kept his grip on the Anbu's wrist and both ended up falling together. The Anbu wrenched his hand back from Sasuke the moment they both hit the floor. He was counting on the fact that when they dropped, the Uchiha's grip would be lessened so he could reclaim his own hand. Both fighters rolled away from each other and got back to their feet quickly. Sasuke, seeing that the Anbu's speed was greater, settled for defending, so when the Anbu threw a punch feint, he was prepared for the thrusting shin kick the Anbu intended to carry out. He simply moved his foot out of the way and kicked away the Anbu's leg right in the calf, driving it with the front of his sandal. The teenager sucked his breath in sharply in pain. Not wasting a valuable opportunity, Sasuke sent a punch to the Anbu's solar plexus, but he raised his guard in time. Not yet done, however, Sasuke dealt a rabbit punch through it that caught him in the chest. The Anbu stepped backward as the punch caught him, lessening the hurt from the blow. The fight went on for a bit longer, and Sasuke's stamina waned. Noticing it, the Anbu decided to stop the fight before it lowered the boy's performance and ending score. I've seen enough. 9, the Anbu said, and drop Aburame's score to 7. Sasuke smirked as he dropped his stance. He bowed head and shoulders to his opponent and the Anbu reciprocated the action. Sasuke strode off the mat, the only one so far to leave it without injury or suffering a tap-out constraint. Iruka wrote the number 9 next to Sasuke's name. His eyes then moved down one place to glance at the next name. All right. Up next, Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde had retreated to the back of the group during the earlier fights. When the crowd of students parted to give him way, Iruka saw the boy sitting on the ground, fidgeting with his hands. He slowly opened his eyes and stood up and stretched, joints cracking. Yeah. I'm coming. He strode between the students and stepped on the mat, facing the Anbu who had already moved back to his place. Wonder if the fight will show me if I can do anything wrong? He whispered. The Anbu barely heard him but he nodded. Both fighters settled into their stances. The Anbu in a sort of loose Chunin stance, while for Naruto's stance, he stood sideways to the Junin, positioning his left foot facing forward towards him with his right foot behind him, pointing to the right. It seemed reminiscent of Sasuke's stance but looser. No, it was more baited, as if he was confident he could dodge and punish anything. The Anbu studied the stance. He had never seen it before. It made him want to challenge it. Hajime. Mizuki started the match. As usual, the Anbu made the first move and charged, but Naruto didn't even move as he approached him. The faceless teen threw a right hook to Naruto's jaw, but in an instant, Naruto's hand rose and pulled it down, wrenching it towards the ground. Not done, he brought up his knee to smash it into the Anbu's chest, still keeping his grip on the arm to make sure the Anbu didn't try to lessen the impact. The teenager merely blocked the knee with his other arm. The Uzumaki released the arm, and as soon as the Anbu stood up straight, he made a full 360-degree turn and roundhouse kicked the Anbu in the neck. The Jonin almost gave a bored vibe as he caught the foot at the ankle with both hands and twisted it.
Naruto leapt off the ground with his other leg and went with the twist, now in midair with his back facing the sky. He now used his hopping leg and kicked the Anbu in the chest, pushing him backward from the force, making him let go. Legs now free, he half-curled himself and landed on the ground head and shoulders first, performing a perfect PK roll. Standing back up quickly, he ran at the Anbu still getting back up.
He kicked his elder in the shin of his right leg with a thrusting kick, he dropped and sweep kicked his left leg and the Anbu fell back down again. He then proceeded to try and stamp the Anbu in the gut, but the Anbu rolled away from it, barely dodging it. When he was still in the roll, the instant he rolled onto his stomach the second time he pushed off with his hands and feet forcefully, getting back up quickly. Naruto ceased going after him and resumed his stance. The Anbu seemed to hesitate a little, realizing the boy's stance and its punishing nature before he charged the Uzumaki again, running with his weight close to the ground. He made a knee feint at the blonde but Naruto merely stepped backward a couple of times. By the time the Anbu had abandoned the feint and finished with a full-on leg kick, Naruto wasn't in that space anymore. The boy grabbed the foot of his oppressor and took a move from Sasuke. He kicked the Anbu in the thigh with the front of his sandal driving upwards. As the Anbu flinched in pain, Naruto used his free arm and elbowed his elder in the shin as hard as he could. The Anbu in desperate pain pulled back his foot and tried to stand, barely able to because of the damage dealt to it. Not giving him a chance to recuperate, he kicked away the good leg of the Anbu with the hook. As the Anbu fell to his back, Naruto leapt over the man's prostrate form and grabbed his own ankles, falling with all his weight with his knees right into the Anbu's stomach. The Anbu made no sound as he got the hit. In fact, it looked as if he was trying to but couldn't because of all of his air being pushed out of his gut at once. Naruto grunted as he got off the Anbu and locked the teen's neck in a chokehold. It was mainly for effort and to show that he had the Anbu in his power, and didn't actually try. In fact, he released him in a few seconds and got up. He could see his genjutsu start to ripple a bit, meaning that the pain was starting to make him lose control of it. Squatting next to the Anbu, he whispered close to his ear. Hey! Control your genjutsu, it's starting to fall apart. The Anbu made no response but Naruto who could start to see green where the man's eyes would be fade away again into nothing, showing that he had resumed control over it. Naruto got back up and lightly stood on the man's uninjured foot. He then pulled up the Anbu back up his feet by his hand. The Anbu shakily stood up and braced most of his weight on his good leg. He bowed his head and shoulders and Naruto did the same. Yes. That's a definite 10. The Anbu chuckled. Pretty good for an academy student. Thanks. But I could have been better. I would rather go for a 9 or 9.5 if possible. Don't want my head to swell any bigger, Naruto said wryly, and, especially since you weren't going all out. 9.5 it is then, the Anbu replied. Iruka, whose eyes were the size of dinner plates from watching the match, wrote 9.5 next to Naruto's name. Everyone else seemed to be in similar states. Sans Hinata, who seemed to be happy for him and blushing. Sasuke, who had observed the bout with a bit of begrudging respect. And Shino, who only lifted an eyebrow over his shades. The happenstance was surprising. How many handicaps were you using? Naruto questioned, much to everyone's surprise. The Anbu chuckled again amusedly. Weight seals on all of my limbs, non-use of chakra to enhance my attacks or cushioning damage, and some chunin taijutsu. Could have been done better if I used only one foot without the handicaps. You wanna fight again, kid, for real? The others listening on could not believe the number of debilitations the Anbu was using. It did diminish Naruto a little in their eyes, but he had done what none of them had come close to achieving, except for Sasuke, and that was to actually beat him. He was also relatively unhurt. The Anbu limped off the mat and blurred through a set of hand seals, and a second later, his hand lit up in an ethereal green glow. He ran it slowly over all his injured areas, and when he was done, he stood again, as good as new. Naruto walked off the mat and went under the tree beside Sasuke. The Uchiha merely glanced at him for a moment before closing his eyes. Nothing else was left to look for. The Anbu walked back to the mat. Next, he said stoically. Iruka looked back at the list. Yamanaka Ino. Most of the students had already gone over to the past side of the classroom. They had completed the ninjutsu portion of their test and all sported their shiny new forehead protectors. Most opted to wear it in the usual fashion on their foreheads, while others wore it around their necks or around their upper arm, like Shikamaru.
Uzumaki sat beside Uchiha and Yamanaka, waiting for his turn. He had the feeling that he was going to fail again, but so what? Wasn't going to be the end of the world. At least he put in a good effort this year. Besides, he wasn't too anxious about getting out of the academy to start a career that had a high mortality rate. He sighed as he looked around at the students who had already passed, noting how happy they are. I'm in denial. I won't whoop for joy if I pass, but I'm not gonna get all moody if I don't. But it's so damn boring in here, I guess I do want to pass. A boy exited from the ninjutsu testing room excitedly, face beaming as he pointed a thumb at his Hitaiate. He half ran to his friends who had already passed, all boasting. Mizuki, who had followed the boy outside, gave an almost tisk tisk vibe as he watched them. He turned to the last three examiners.
Uchiha Sasuke, you're next. The onyx-eyed youth got out of his seat and followed the silver-haired man inside the room and shut the door behind him. 2 minutes later, he was back out, now sporting a Hitaiate on his forehead. Seeing that the exams were almost done anyway, he just sat back in his original seat beside Naruto. The blonde lifted an eyebrow at this but said nothing. At the back of his mind, he was wondering where his counterparts' fangirls were, but he realized that almost, if not all of them, were now sporting large bruises and welts on their faces and arms from the earlier taijutsu portion. They were no doubt embarrassed and ashamed of them, since Sasuke himself had only one that was near invisible. Or they were thinking that the bruises were marring their good looks. Either way, Naruto was happy for the quiet. Mizuki poked his head out of the open doorway. Uzumaki Naruto, you're up next. He got out of his seat at the beacon and made his way inside. Once in, he closed the door and looked to his teachers, both of which were seated. He could see 2 forehead protectors in a box close to Iruka on the table. He quickly refocused his attention to Mizuki, who had started to speak. I need you to do a henge. Make your attempt when ready. Transformation. Naruto seamlessly hanged into Shikamaru Nara and yawned in the impersonation, muttering the word, troublesome. Iruka half expected it though, knowing that the 2 boys shared a few attitudes. The blonde broke his henge and once again stood at attention, waiting for his next test. He already knew what it was, though. Alright. Now, do a kawarimi. Let us know when ready, Mizuki said. Ready. Naruto said immediately. Iruka took up a senbon sitting in a cup on the table and threw it at the boy's thigh. In a poof of smoke, it was revealed that he had substituted for a chair. Amino sighed in relief. Last year, Naruto had replaced himself for Mizuki, and as of consequence, the silver-haired man took it in his leg. While impressive to be able to substitute himself for a chunin when he was not yet a genin, he got a lot of flack for the action. Naruto re-entered the room from outside, plucked the needle from the chair, then placed the furniture back outside. He then gave back the needle to Iruka, who replaced it in the cup. The boy then returned to his place, thoroughly ready to fail. "Alright, Naruto. Time for your last jutsu. I need you to perform the Bunshin no Jutsu. Clone Technique 3 is the requirement," Mizuki stated. The boy sighed inwardly. "Well, that's just how it goes. At least I have all of this year's notes in case I fail. I won't have to take them again, but damn. This is getting too goddamned repetitive. I should have tried to find out if I would pass or not." He went through the 3 hand seals, ending on dog. Bunshin no Jutsu. He cleaned out his desk, gathering all of his notes together, and put them in his knapsack. He then strapped it to his back and prepared to leave, but someone stood in his way. Of all people, it was Sasuke. "Naruto. Whatcha want?" he asked evenly. He didn't know what he wanted. Is he feeling smug or something? "How come you're not wearing your headband?" "I didn't pass." For a full second, the Uchiha looked surprised, something that Naruto had never seen on the youth before. "How come?" "Bunshin. I can't do it." "Ah. Maybe it's like my mind. Did you know that I've got problems doing it too?" Naruto lifted an eyebrow. "No, I didn't. If you did, how did you pass?" "I usually use up most of my chakra before attempting the jutsu. When I've less chakra, it's easier to control before doing it. The first thing I did this morning was to use most of my chakra before coming to school and doing the exam. If they're going to make use attempted all year at end of terms, then it was bound to be in the practical too." Naruto thought over what the Uchiha said. The chakra theory made sense. It should be easier to create a jutsu by putting all the chakra you had left in it when running low than to use a tiny amount of chakra when you had too much. But one thing did not make sense. "So why are you telling me now, when I've already failed? Hell, why try to help me at all?" he questioned. "We don't talk." Sasuke gave off a shrugging vibe. "If you'd mentioned your control earlier, I would have told you. And for the fact that I will have to be placed on a team soon. You're probably the only person here with enough capabilities to make a decent teammate. Unlike these others who barely try. I don't want anyone slowing me down," Sasuke admitted before he started to walk away. "You should go talk to the teachers and see if they'll give you a second chance." Naruto stared at the retreating boy. That he did not see coming. All he said made perfect sense, but he never would have thought the Uchiha had that side to him. He shrugged before he went off in search of one of his chunin teachers. He saw Mizuki first, inside the ninjutsu test room. "Excuse me, Mizuki-sensei. I would like to speak to you about something." "I as well. I was just about to go look for you. But you may speak first." He put down his paperwork and listened. "I think I've found a way to be able to perform the Bunshin technique. Is it possible for me to retake that particular portion of the test? Say." He briefly wondered what he could do to burn off all of his chakra. He'd need time. Tomorrow? Mizuki was doing cartwheels in his mind at the incredibly easy opportunity to get what he wanted. "No, Naruto. You can't do this test again. You did pretty well in the other portions of the test, so I thought I'd tell you about another makeup test that is possible at this time." "I'm listening." Naruto finally finished reading the jutsu theory thoroughly for the second time. "Alright. So I just formed the handseal like so." He made the modified ox handseal and started manipulating his chakra. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shadow clone technique. A plume of smoke erupted beside him, out of which a clone emerged. Already sure that the clone was a success, he decided to test it nonetheless with a fist bump. Both did it at the same time. Felt pretty solid. He dispersed the clone and turned back to the scroll. He saw numerous other techniques that barely made any sense to his eyes, and most of them had next to impossible requirements or needed scarce resources. Absent-mindedly wondering how many clones he could make, he abused the stronger version of the technique and was delighted when he found himself able to make hundreds. He also found that he could make them far more durable by expending more chakra into them. Not much more was gleaned after that, and after 30 minutes more of experimentation, he felt himself running on fumes. All of a sudden, he was discovered by one of his chunin instructors. "Naruto. What are you doing with the scroll of forbidden jutsu?" Iruka yelled, dropping from a nearby tree branch and entering the clearing the Uzumaki was in. Naruto blinked. "I'm just doing the secondary test, Iruka-sensei. You should know about it, after all." Mizuki-sensei said that all the ninja were in on it. Secondary test? What's secondary test? There's no such thing, Naruto. Kami, what else has Mizuki been saying to you? Iruka asked the blonde, unbelieving. A large Fuma shuriken sailed horizontally through the clearing from behind Iruka. Naruto saw it coming and tackled the scarred man to the ground, making them both lie flat as it passed over them, slicing through more trees, leaving destruction in its wake. Oof, Kuso. Iruka had most of his breath knocked out of him when the blonde dove into his stomach. He was about to protest when he saw the weapon sail above him, right where his chest would have been. He quickly rolled the Uzumaki off of him and took out a kunai from his pouch. Who's there? Mizuki stepped out of the shadows in the trees and smirked. My, Iruka. Don't tell me that you had to be saved by an academy student. What's this all about, Mizuki? Iruka stepped in front of Naruto as he yelled his question. It's an exam exercise. Didn't you know? He subtly shook his right hand, loosening his hidden kunai from its place inside his sleeve. We were testing Naruto. Mizuki laughed. The hell? Don't break character. Naruto failed. There is no such test, Mizuki. In answer, kunai fell into his waiting palm and he threw it at a great speed. Iruka couldn't dodge in time. So he tried to turn a little, the knife taking root in his lung instead of his heart. Still, not looking too good. Ah. Mizuki, you're a traitor. Naruto, who had watched the whole exchange, now realized what was happening. He was tricked to steal the scroll of forbidden techniques. Now the person who could defend him just took a hit from someone he was inferior to. In short, he was low on chakra and he had to go versus a chunin who was very likely to kill him. Naruto, give me the scroll. The silver-haired man's tone spoke volumes of seriousness. Naruto tried to think of a way out. He hoped that the Hokage was watching this and was on his way to help him. He'd better stall. You're the one messing with my tests, aren't you? Even the one today. Yeah. That's right, 9 tails. The Uzumaki frowned. 9 tails. Mizuki grinned. Didn't you know? Don't tell him, Mizuki Teme. It's forbidden. The man on the ground choked a little on some blood before he spat it out. What's forbidden? Naruto asked, his expression confused. When the Kyuubi appeared 13 years ago. Yeah, the Kyuubi wasn't destroyed or killed by the 4th Hokage. It was sealed in a newborn infant at the time. That's why you have no parents. That's why you have those whisker marks. That's why everyone hates you. It's because you're the 9-tailed fox. Mizuki shouted. He unstrapped his second Fuma shuriken from off his back. Enough chit-chat. Die. He slung the massive shuriken at the boy. Iruka was about to throw himself in front of it when Naruto took a kunai and pushed the chunin out of the way. As the shuriken was about to cleave its way through the blonde, he sidestepped it and stuck the kunai through the shuriken's center hole. He felt its driving force getting to be too much to completely stop it, so he slammed it into the ground. It started to cut through the soil, but after a moment, it stopped and stayed. The other 2 chunin were wide-eyed. What? You can't expect me to learn everything at school, did you? Naruto smirked. Besides, I already had my suspicions about the fox. If anything, I like the whisker marks. Removed his kunai from the shuriken hole and assumed his taijutsu style, with the kunai in a forward grip. Mizuki took out a kunai and readied his stance as well. You're getting ahead of yourself. I was going to kill you quickly, but now, I'm going to stab you in every organ, then, I'm gonna drive my kunai through your eyes. Meh, I got nothing. The boy shrugged. Mizuki sprinted at the boy with his kunai driving forward, fully intent on carrying out his threat. Naruto lifted his own kunai and parried it to his right. As Mizuki started to lose his balance at his diverted velocity, Naruto grabbed the man's arm at the elbow and turned him around fully before pushing him away. He then threw his kunai at the man's back. He had unfortunately missed all his vital organs. The silver-haired chunin merely grunted in pain before he reached his free hand behind him and plucked it out. Gh. He turned around and glared at the boy. He gripped the kunai in a fist of iron before he threw it at a terrific speed, aiming for the boy's face. The lad fell flat as it passed over him, the bloody kunai embedding itself in a tree. Naruto got back up and started throwing his shuriken at the man, but he deflected them all. Soon running out, he noticed the Fuma stuck in the ground from earlier close to him. He pulled it up gingerly before he started spinning around twice, swinging the massive shuriken before he threw it at the traitor, but he simply sidestepped it. In a blur, Mizuki had charged the boy and buried his foot in Naruto's gut. The Uzumaki gasped for air weakly before he tried to press on, grabbing the foot at the ankle and turning it on the inside. The man went with the turn and fell flat on his face with Naruto still holding his leg. Before he could lash out with his second leg, Naruto lifted his leg and drop-kicked the man on the ground with his heel, right into the small of his back. Gah! Naruto finished twisting the man's foot, finally feeling satisfied when he heard a crack. The man yelled in pain before he finally kicked away the boy, who fell onto his back. The man got back up painfully and unsteadily onto his good leg before he shuffled over to the boy. He took out his last kunai and plunged it down at the boy's heart. The boy poofed away into a log, making Mizuki give a small yelp in surprise. He was about to go search for him, but the boy fell out of a nearby tree ungracefully in a heap on the ground. Naruto was panting heavily. It took all the chakra he had left to perform the substitution, and his body had given out on him. Mizuki pulled his kunai out of the log and smirked before shakily making his way over to the boy. Said boy was staring wide-eyed as his about-to-be killer come over to him, only to be stopped by Iruka, who grabbed his foot. "What the, Iruka, let me go," the traitor said angrily, trying to pull away. Iruka mumbled something incomprehensible. Mizuki, finally having enough, stabbed the man in the back, right where his heart would be. Iruka grunted weakly. He looked over to Naruto and mouthed, "I'm sorry." The light faded from his eyes as Naruto stared in disbelief as his former teacher murdered another. Mizuki was still caught in a dead man's grip, but he shrugged it off easily and callously. Naruto felt something start to stir inside him as his visage became more feral. His whisker marks deepened and his eyes red and slitted. He found new strength in his chakra coils, and the boy got to his feet, thoroughly befuddled why this was so. He looked at his hands to see them with extended nails, resembling claws. The boy scowled as he looked up once more at Mizuki, who was startled at the boy's intimidating feral looks. The boy snapped before he snarled in anger. In a blur, the boy disappeared and reappeared behind the man in a burst of speed, slashing at his neck, releasing a red torrent. Not done, he kicked the man at his earlier stab wound, making the man face plant. The boy grasped both of the man's legs and swung him around, his blood splashing around them with perfect radius before he flung the man against a tree. At the last second, Mizuki had turned himself so his back would impact it instead of his head. He slid down it in a heap, blood freely running down his body and dyeing his clothes a deep shade of crimson in the worst way. Naruto picked up the man's kunai and stalked over to the man and picked him up by the shoulder, pressing most of his weight against a tree. He then started stabbing the man repeatedly in a hellish fury while screaming, as if it would bring his teacher back to life. The man had already died from the 20th stab, but the boy kept going, the front of the boy's orange jumpsuit now stained red and bloody, as was his stabbing hand. His rage continued well further stab before he plunged the kunai through the man's right eye socket, driving it through to the back of the tree and staked him there. Viscous eye fluid mixed with blood flowed out of the socket down his cheek, resembling tears. Naruto backpedaled slowly from the bloody scene as he came down from his emotional high. When the Hokage and two Anbu showed up a few minutes later, they found the boy slumped against another tree, watching his shaking, bloody hands. The Sandaime Hokage's eyes flickered to all three people in the clearing. Two of them were corpses while all three were blooded, particularly Mizuki. The corpses did not hold his attention for long, though. Instead, it was centered on Naruto, who was in some type of catatonic shock, who still hadn't acknowledged his or the ANBU's presence. The boy was just sitting there as if he had just witnessed a murder, which he practically had. Whilst striding over to the boy, he motioned to the two Anbu to check Iruka for a pulse and to remove Mizuki. Reaching the boy, he mentally recalled what psychology books and experience had taught him in adverse times such as these. He sat beside the boy in the grass at the foot of the tree and waited for Naruto to speak first. When it showed that he was capable of speech, then he would speak to him. Hiruzen watched the two Anbu look over Iruka before shaking their heads to him. The man sighed as he waved at them, signaling them to take the man to the morgue. They did and soon returned and checked Mizuki's carcass. At first, they were fussing over how to remove him from his spot on the tree without making it worse. That's when they realized that it couldn't get any worse for the man. With a grunt, One of them yanked out the kunai, pinning up the man to the tree, and shinned away with him as well. They returned quickly and then picked up every weapon on the ground. In a matter of minutes, besides the crimson smears on the ground and the bloody Uzumaki, there was nothing unusual in the clearing. It had been a few hours. Sarutobi had long since dismissed the Anbu and waited patiently beside Naruto. It was now midnight, the start of Saturday morning, but he was a man of patience. Besides, if Naruto could stay still and watched his own hands for 3 hours and he as a Kage couldn't, he no longer deserved the title. Iruka sensei, he killed Iruka sensei. He was trying to help me, and he killed him. Hiruzen looked to him, waiting expectantly. He knew what was coming next. And then killed Mizuki. He looked at his hands and as if he just noticed that they were bloody, he tried to wipe them on his clothes. When he realized that his clothes were also bloodied with Mizuki's life, he started to furiously wipe his hands on the grass, but the blood was already dry. "It's my fault," the Sandame stated as he watched the boy's actions. "If only I had arrived sooner, this could have been prevented. I had some difficulty finding here because nothing is outstanding to this location. I must really be a demon. He started to stutter. "Naruto-kun. Stop. You are not a demon. You merely hold the beast back at bay. You are its prison, you are its master, you used its power to kill a handicapped teacher." Hiruzen shook his head. "They lived in a bloody ninja world. Mizuki was about to kill you. Were you going to let him kill you?" "No. Of course not. If only I had my chakra at the time, and beaten him up or something. Or, if I had tried to find out." "Naruto. Perhaps you should come to my home and sleep instead. It would benefit you more if you weren't alone right now." The Hokage stood up and held out his hand to the boy. Naruto watched him for a moment, not knowing what to do for himself, before grasping the man's hand. As soon as he did, they both disappeared in a body flicker of a swirl of leaves. Naruto's eyes snapped open suddenly, as was his habit every day to awake at this time. He already registered where he was the second he saw the ceiling. He knew what was happening once more. His memory kicked in about what happened the night before. His body slightly ached in soreness as he remembered stabbing a dead man. The man had no identity to him. He was just another person. Didn't matter if he was good or bad. He knew all the speeches that would be given him, all the condolences for Iruka. He might as well get breakfast, and the sooner he got this day over with, the sooner he could get to training. Now that he had killed, his ninja career had taken off. He could train without repercussions for training in regimens beyond that of his class in the open. "So I took 1 day to get over it? Is that normal?"
Recalling that there was a demon sealed inside him, Naruto realized that nothing about him was normal.
He kicked off the sheets and leaned over the edge onto his feet.
He immediately left the room and made his way to the kitchen to have breakfast. It would be his second time, so he knew where to go, not getting lost or wandering into the wrong rooms along the way. Finding the kitchen, he plopped down in an empty seat in between the older man with brown hair and a goatee and a little boy who was still changing teeth. He already knew their names, but if they were going through introductions again, he would just roll with it.
"Morning, Naruto. How did you sleep?" the elder asked, putting down his booklet. "Like the usual." The blonde grunted. The man took that as a good sign that he was over his shock. "Naruto, huh?" the little boy said. "Mornin' Naruto. My name's Konohamaru." "Hey, Konohamaru." The man with the goatee got up and started preparing breakfast. "You didn't stumble your way into our rooms on accident coming here, did you, Naruto?" "No, Asuma-san." The man lifted an eyebrow. "How did you know my name?" "You're well known in the village." Naruto lied smoothly, not wanting to disclose that he knew him from their future meeting. "Oh. Well, good for me, huh? I'm popular." The Sarutobi chuckled as he prepared some soba noodles and eggs and dished it out to the two boys, as well as some for himself, before seating himself again. Naruto frowned a bit, staring at the soba. It was his least favorite noodle type and he had to go through it again for the second time. He shrugged and started eating, hurrying to get it over with and out of the way. Soon finished, he placed his dish in the sink. He was going to have to be ignorant for a few hours. Nothing he couldn't handle. "So, Sarutobi-san?" Asuma looked up from his meal. "Can I have my clothes? I can't just go out in underclothes that I slept in." "That's going to be a problem. We disposed of your bloody jumpsuit. You didn't expect to go back to wearing it, did you?" "So what am I going to wear then?" He retorted. I'm sure I can find something around here you can try on. At least until we get you to the clothing store that outfits ninjas. Besides, if you have any more orange jumpsuits at home like the one you were wearing, get rid of them too. Honestly, kid, you're gonna need to lose bright colors so you don't catch a kunai in your back when you're out in the field. Outfit change, eh? Oh yeah, I will. I definitely will. X equals Naruto and Asuma completed their journey to the ninja service establishment, one of them gratefully. The younger of the pair wore a jacket and pants 2 sizes too big and the cuffs he had put into them were beginning to come undone, not to mention the fact that the clothing wasn't already cumbersome and awkward enough, to begin with. They pushed the door in and entered, allowing the smell of brand new clothing and lubricating oil to hit their nostrils. The store was relatively empty of other patrons, so they just made their way to the front desk and tapped the bell waiting on it. Hello? Asuma called. I'd like some service. Coming. A girl's voice sounded from the back. Almost immediately, a twin bun-haired girl entered through a door behind the counter came up to the 2 males. Welcome to Higurashi Shinobi Supplies. She welcomed. It sounded more genuine than routine, and Naruto smiled in appreciation. Hey Tenten, the Sarutobi greeted. I came down to get Naruto here some things to prepare himself to be a ninja. He gestured to the boy by patting him on the head. And get him some new clothes. The girl smiled at the blonde. Naruto, is it? I've heard of you before. Good things, right? He lifted an eyebrow. He goofily did a pose to amuse, but the girl merely shrugged. Well, they said you were so quiet most people didn't know what you sounded like. The Higurashi smirked. I guess I should count myself lucky. Let's begin shopping, shall we? Asuma suggested to the children. In a short half-hour later, Naruto was dressed in a dark blue close-fitting shirt with a V-neck and long sleeves that were slack around the elbows. Black ankle-length pants went far in completing the look and gray sandals rounded it all off nicely. It echoed his previous outfit, but the drab color scheme was more agreeable with everyone present.
He had a backpack on his back that he placed his mesh armor inside to carry home, as well as a set of dozens of new shurikens, kunai, and yards of ninja wire on a spool, and about 10 each of C-ranked and B-ranked paper bombs. He had everything sorted out in different pockets in the said backpack, and with the even distribution, the bag felt right at home on his back.
Now for a weapon. Tenten slightly squealed in her excitement but stopped when she saw the patrons staring at her as if the bukajutsu tools hadn't just been purchased. What? I just like weapons, okay. Sheesh. She waved her hand dismissively before she turned to Naruto. Don't you want something to fall back on when you've just about thrown everything else? Never fancied that kind of situation for anyone. So, what kind of weapon would you like to use? She took his hand and stretched it while feeling his biceps. Good definition. A strength type O guy? He retracted his arm and started to think about how he stabbed Mizuki full of holes. I must still have trauma. Something blunt? Tonfa? Iron knuckles? Hammers? Staffs? Asuma felt put on the spot. His father had asked him to help Naruto get equipped, but he didn't count on his purchases going into this region. Let me see your staffs. And mind the pricing. She led them to the back rooms to look over their merchandise of staffs, which was quite impressive. Showing them staff after staff, nothing fully appealed to the blonde. His mind started to wander back to when the Hokage asked if he would have let Mizuki kill him. He didn't want to kill anyone, but sooner or later he would need to. It was his profession. Besides, he knew what he wanted. He decided to speak up. Is there anything that's both blunt and sharp at the same time? Anything? She stopped what she was doing and looked up to her forehead and thought. Well, I think I have a tonfa with a blade on one side. No air, something else. To be honest, we got something experimental from the Land of Iron 2 years ago. No one wanted it. Well? What is it, Tenten? Asuma asked. It's like some kind of folding blade. It's also like a weird kind of jute, too. Let me ask Tu-san if he knows where it is. She ran back to a door that likely led into her living quarters while the males waited on her return. A few minutes later, she returned with a relatively small box in her palm before she removed the cover and presented it to the Uzumaki. It was like an oversized rectangle-shaped handle with slight palm grips on either side. It was about 6 inches long. Asuma gave a disbelieving air. That's it. Where's the rest of it? Tenten firmly gripped it before she swung it down rapidly. The rest of the weapon extended out by 2 feet, thick at the bottom and small at the top. On one side, it was rounded off and blunt, but the other side was sharp to a decent degree. It was like a one-edged sword with an extremely blunt opposite side. 2. That's new. The man with the goatee remarked, observing the development. The boy next to him beamed at the sharpened baton and asked the girl how much it cost. I asked Tusan about it and he said he had clean forgotten about it. He says you can have it for half price. That's 8,000 ryo. Asuma's cigarette fell out of his mouth when his jaw dropped. That thing was 16,000 ryo. Yeah. Tenten smiled cheerfully. It's made with some expensive alloy to guarantee durability. Besides, chakra can be infused into it. That's always a good thing. Right? I mean, I don't know if he can do it, but sooner or later he'll learn, right? I don't have that much on me. Asuma scratched the back of his head while he picked up his cigarette off the ground. I'll be back. Gimme a few minutes. He hurriedly left in Shunshin's, leaving the children to stand around awkwardly in his absence. So, used anything like this before? The blonde asked. No, never. If you're going to learn, you'll probably need a sword user and a baton user or something. She shrugged. Or figure it out yourself, worst case scenario. I self-taught myself, but it always feels lacking. Maybe you could read a book on human anatomy, figure out the best places to hit in the meantime. The chat continued like this for a while until the man came back, patting a pocket with more confidence than he'd had previously. Alright. I think I've got enough to cover the whole sum. They went back to the front desk where the brown-eyed girl retrieved a calculator and the two patrons crossed back to the correct side of the counter. As soon as they were settled, Tenten added up the prices. Okay, let's see. Kunai, shuriken, bombs. She punched the buttons in the buttons on the calculator while she announced the items. Wire, and, that half-blade thing. Naruto's sweat dropped at her name for it, as it continued to show how little she knew about it. That's 23,810 ryo. Good thing it's not my money. Asuma counted out the money exactly when Naruto stopped him by holding his hand out in front of him. What is it, Naruto? Just give her the full 24,000, like a tip. A tip? The man smiled like the cat who ate the canary. You like Tenten, Naruto? The boy was not about to be embarrassed. Yeah, she's nice, he said in earnest. Asuma, now realizing his tease had no effect, merely grumbled to himself before handing over the money to the blushing girl. Whatever. Naruto took up the tactical weapon from off the counter. Thanks, Tenten. See you around. Yeah. Later. She turned around stiffly before disappearing into the back room again, muttering something about blondes. Naruto merely sighed. Well, that's that. I'm just gonna go home to drop the things off and then we can go visit old man Hokage. X =X=, the aged Sandame sighed as he stroked his forehead in, trying to chase away the growing headache. And Naruto was the source of it all. Naruto learned the shadow clone technique in a mere hour. He's got some good battlefield sense too, fresh out of the academy and taking down a Chunin, albeit violently. One of the Hyuga Anbu told me that he used the Kyuubi's chakra in the final moments. I should have him under watch for a while longer. Sensing that he was about to be disturbed, he looked at the door, just before it was knocked. Getting a feel for the chakras on the other side, he invited them to enter. Come in. Just dropping Naruto off, Asuma said as they entered, nudging the boy forwards towards the man. He said he wanted to see you. Okay, Asuma. You can leave. If anything, Naruto can explain some things. With a quick wave, the man left via the door again, allowing the two to be alone. So, Naruto-kun, the Hokage said to the 13-year-old, how are you feeling now? I feel better. I'm not at a full 100%, but I'm better. Maybe I'll never be at a full 100 again. You mean a loss of innocence? He asked rhetorically. It's a terrible ninja world, Naruto-kun, and I won't lie to you. You'd be expected to kill again, by your own choice, when you don't have one, and when your home asks you to. It's not an endpoint that everyone wants, and it'd be up to you to gauge all your options first. I know all that. It's just, the boy hesitated. Could have done without all the trauma, all that bloodshed. Kami, and Iruka. He didn't deserve that. And what about me? Having the Kyuubi in me. Did it help influence that? Hiruzen thought of the answer's ramifications in the long term and shook his head. So I can't blame it. I did all of that myself. I want to say that anybody that I do end up killing might be people who deserve it, that they're nasty, bottom of the barrel scum. It's something that you do get used to, taking a life. Different ninjas have different ideologies and methods of dealing with it, and all of it is reasonable. As long as one doesn't like it. Never. Good. If you need to discuss that morbid topic further, I could get you some psychiatric help. It's not uncommon. I can imagine a long line, to be honest. Naruto interrupted with the jest, getting the Hokage to smile a bit. But what's your ideology about killing? It's either the cure to the bane of other people, or the end of a person's pain. Hiruzen allowed the boy some time to consider it and could see that he was slowly adopting it as his own. He could feel his headache starting to disappear already. You were forced to grow up sooner than you should have, but in any case, I'm glad to know that you were spared in this disaster. I provided some money for you to get some supplies. About that. Am I a ninja now? Hiruzen chuckled. Naruto was somewhat more friendly with him. Perhaps it was because of the bonding they were doing recently. Yes, Naruto-kun. In fact, here is your headband. I wanted to give it to you myself. He reached inside his desk and fished out a headband with a blue cloth and tossed it to him deftly. Congratulations. You're one step closer to being Hokage. Naruto caught the headband and looked at the leaf insignia. Hokage, huh? He placed it on his forehead and tied it behind his head. I guess so. If not a Hokage, then what? The man used to hear the boy proclaim about being Kage up until 3 years ago. Did he have a new dream? A person who always makes the right decision. Can't say being perfect, but being wrong sucks pretty bad. He had somewhat rehearsed his answer. Is that so? Making decisions based on others' past experiences? No, well, yeah, them too. But mostly decisions based on mine. Sarutobi was befuddled. The boy was only 13 years old. How much experience did he have to make wise and informed decisions? Anyway, Gigi, I want to say thank you for paying for my supplies. Especially for the last weapon. What was it? Naruto described it to him and how it worked in a nutshell. And one side sharp and the other is blunt. I see. Will you name it? Hell no, anyone who names a weapon obviously doesn't have time to be making friends. The last thing I want is another reason to need a psychiatrist. It's a fancy jute. Everything came to 24,000 ryo, by the way. Seeing the Hokage's surprised reaction, he went on to explain, it would have been more expensive if I wasn't given a discount. That's what they told me anyway. Besides, I'll pay you back when I get a high-ranking mission pay, huh? Hint hint. I wanna go save a princess or something.
Hiruzen chuckled. No need. My own account is quite sizable after all these years of saving. I don't even really make purchases that often anymore.
That's so. Well, my apartment needs a little renovating then, if you don't mind. Perhaps in a fortnight. Get some planning done and such. Naruto bowed his head and shoulders in thankfulness. Thanks, Gigi. =x=== He sat down in his usual seat, bored as usual. Everyone jostled around excitedly, sporting their headbands in their respective places.
Most were conversing loudly about how they were going to be the best, yelling who was better than who, and so on. The door opened slowly and all eyes turned to see Sasuke Uchiha wearing his usual stoicism on the outside. The last Uchiha saw fangirls swarming his usual seat, waiting on him to sit in anticipation. He groaned internally before sitting beside Naruto. When all saw his action, it was then that they finally took notice of Naruto's presence.
Naruto started to count in his mind. 3, 2, 1, Q Inuzuka. Naruto. What the hell are you doing here? You failed the test Friday, idiot. This is just for people who are real ninjas.
Naruto had rehearsed his answer. I am a real ninja. But if you want to know how I passed, wait 3 minutes. You'll soon find out.
What the fuck does that mean? Kiba yelled the question. Kiba, be patient. His answer is curious, but if it has merit, we shall see what he means when 3 minutes have flown, Shino said quietly, placating the boy. Everyone shrugged and decided to wait as well. Something had always been strange about Naruto. Perhaps today they could get some answers. Sasuke closed his eyes. So you passed, huh? Yeah. Your advice was useful but it wasn't what I used. Is that so? What did you do? The coal-eyed youth asked. 2.5 minutes. HN. Exactly 2.5 minutes later, a puff of smoke erupted behind the teacher's desk at the front of the class. When it cleared, it revealed the taijutsu testing Anbu from Friday. It is now 9 a.m. Get to your seats, he ordered in his monotone. Everyone who was standing or seated inappropriately quickly got to their correct seats, thoroughly intimidated. When they were all settled, the Anbu began to speak again. I will speak only once. I will not repeat myself pertaining to any controversial matter involved. If anything is unclear, seek clarity elsewhere. Getting their affirmative response, he nodded. Very well. I've been commissioned by the Hokage and Naruto Uzumaki to bring some issues to light. It was to be done in the hopes that all of you would rid yourselves of complacency and childish ways, as the life of the shinobi is riddled with death, lies, and betrayal. Only a few details were to be spared. He threw a kunai blurring quick that took root in Shikamaru's desk, right next to his head. The boy was jolted awake by the sudden action. As in that case, I could have killed him in his slumber, the Anbu continued. Suddenly, everyone else who had started to zone out was back at full attention. This wasn't some ordinary customary warning anymore. On Friday, Mizuki, your Chunin teacher, deceived Naruto and convinced him to steal the scroll of forbidden techniques for himself to pilfer. Before the scroll could change hands, Iruka Amino found Naruto trying to learn a technique from said scroll. Just as Iruka confronted him for stealing it, Mizuki arrived and betrayed them both. Iruka was mortally injured, leaving Naruto to fend off Mizuki. Before he could be killed, Iruka intervened, and was murdered trying to protect him. Everyone leaned forward, eyes getting bigger and bigger as the Anbu told the tale. Mizuki finished off Iruka by stabbing him in his back, right into his heart. When Naruto saw that Iruka got killed, he himself killed Mizuki in reprisal by stabbing him. Over 50, Naruto muttered. Over 50 times in his upper torso, before stabbing Mizuki through his eye and pinning him to the tree in his rage. Everyone gave the blonde a horrified look before they tried to inch away from him, sans Sasuke. This is why none of your teachers are present. Iruka is now buried and Mizuki is now ashes. The reason for this recount is to make it clear that you understand what kind of life you're getting into. Being a ninja is not fun and games. To be completely straightforward, we kill for a living. All who think this is too much for them to handle, please leave now. Everyone looked at each other, a bit unsure. Slowly, Roana got out of his seat and strode out of the class. With his exodus, more and more of the students trickled out until only 18 students remained. If that is all, I shall now read the teams with their respective squad numbers along with Jonin senseis. There will be some improvisation for teams broken with the probable loss of some team members who just made their exit. He quickly announced teams from memory recall to the silent class. Next is Team 7. Uchiha, Uzumaki and Haruno. Team 8 is Hyuga, Aburame and Inuzuka. Team 9 is still in circulation. Team 10 is Yamanaka, Nara and Akamichi. Your senseis will come to fetch you at times of their choosing in this room. He looked over the class through his mask in scrutiny. Good day, he finished, before leaving in a body flicker. Most of the students started to breathe more easily in the ANBU's leave. They all looked to Naruto who still retained a bored and hard look. Now you know why, Inuzuka. Find anything wrong? Something unclear? I don't believe it. Besides, you still can't even create a decent clone. Do you think you're hot stuff? You're still shit. Most of the girls were hesitant and no one agreed with Kiba, Sakura especially, not knowing how to speak since he was now her teammate. Suddenly afraid, she started to wonder if he would kill her, seeing that she always tried to hit him. He would have plenty of chances, now that they were on the same team. She wasn't even feeling celebratory knowing that she would be on the same team with Sasuke as well. Naruto formed the cross-ram handseal and formed a clone out in the walkway beside Kiba. You were saying? Faye. It's just one. Most of us can make a half-dozen. Naruto nodded to the clone, who nodded back in response. The clone decked Kiba in the face right below his eye, making the boy fall back onto his butt. Stay down, the clone said before it reached its hands up and snapped its neck, dispersing in smoke. Kiba was too frightened to even move from his spot on the floor. Hinata from where she was sitting was saddened by Naruto's actions, starting to think that there was more to him that she hadn't seen, and more that she didn't want to. Shino merely raised an eyebrow while Sasuke was intrigued. That's new. Yes, it is, Sasuke. Yes, it is. It had been 3 hours. The door slid open to reveal a Jonin with a half mask and spiky silver hair that styled upwards and to the side. He also wore his Hatai 8 over his left eye, which had finished covering up his face by a fair 3/4. His right eye looked over the remaining 3 students who were waiting for him. Naruto was spinning a kunai on his fingertips trying to improve his chakra control. Sasuke was sitting beside him with his hands balled under his chin and Sakura sat behind Sasuke, reading. He noticed that the girl was glancing nervously at Naruto, and from what he had heard, Kakashi believed that he knew why. Looks like a quiet bunch. Team 7, meet me on the roof, he announced before walking off, leaving the door open for them to exit as well. The students heaved themselves up and filed out to the roof, Sasuke in the lead. When they arrived there, they saw their supposed sensei waiting on them with his hands in his pockets. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto called to him when he was hailing distance. "How do you know my name?" the man replied in question. The genin finished closing the distance and sat on the steps in front of the jonin. "You're very well known," he lied. Kakashi narrowed his visible eye, detecting the lie. Why would he lie? How does he know? That's fine, he stated, not betraying his thoughts. It was a good lie because he was well known. How else, however, could he know, and why would he want to hide it? He'd find out later. As you all just heard, my name is Kakashi Hatake. We will have some introductions. Who's first? Kakashi gave an example himself on how it was to be done, but he downright skipped telling them anything besides his name. Now it's your turn, Sakura. Alright. My name is Sakura Haruno. She looked over at Sasuke and blushed heavily. I dislike, she glanced at Naruto and hesitated. Ino pig. My hobbies are, she looked at Sasuke with her peripherals. Making scrapbooks and reading. And my dream is, she now squealed a little. Okay, I'm almost sorry I asked. Brooder, you're up. Hold up. Naruto interjected. You looked at Sasuke, talking about making scrapbooks and, he paused in hesitation. Never mind. Go ahead, Sasuke. Let's save the best for last. By the way, you better check to see if you've lost some of your hair or some shit. Sakura yelled that she didn't do anything like that, and Naruto laughed until his eyes started to water. Whatever. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I like to train. I dislike fangirls. My hobbies and likes are the same. My dream, no, my ambition is to kill Itachi. A little dark. Kakashi sighed. Blondie, you're next. My name is Uzumaki, Hatake, he said evenly. His visible eye narrowed before he relented. Fine. You call me by name and title, I'll call you yours. Naruto, introduce yourself please. Naruto held his hands up. Hey, sorry. Don't want to sound disrespectful, but I don't like hearing, Blondie, it sounds really disrespectful. Just use my name, especially since we don't know each other so well. Okay, some perspective. Can I call you Emo Eyepatch? I get your point. Uzumaki, Kakashi said, his voice getting stern, now make your introduction. Alright. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like to be well informed and surrogate family members like Yamane and Hokage Gigi. I dislike those who are biased towards me. My hobbies include, what do I like doing? I think training, and I guess fixing things. Yeah, fixing things. My dream is to always be able to make the best decisions. It's a stupid kinda dream, but it'd be nice to have people be able to depend on you, he said with a small smile. It's impossible to always make the right decision, Hatake remarked with a small sigh. My time with Obito and Rin is proof of that. It is impossible, Naruto admitted carelessly, but all you need is a little foresight. Now, what's next, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi coughed into his hand to clear his throat. The test you did Friday was merely a screening process to see who would and could be genin material. You still have another test. Say what? Sakura nearly shrieked. You have to pass the respective Jonin's test. Each of us Jonins has our own exam and mine is a bell test. Elaborate please, Naruto said. I'll tell you tomorrow. And don't eat any breakfast tomorrow or you'll puke. Sasuke shrugged at this. Naruto grumbled about mad teachers, and Sakura was downright indignant. Kakashi smiled. Test starts at 7 a.m. Later, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. They all stood up and straightened themselves with a small stretch. Well, that's that, Naruto said. Let's all go home and get some sleep. Rest ourselves. Who died and made you team leader? Sakura asked. Who died? Naruto asked back the question. Never mind. She shook her head quickly. Sasuke merely grunted before he ran and jumped off the roof at the third story and landed nimbly, going home. Naruto did the same by swallow diving off the roof at the adjacent corner, flipped in midair and landed on his feet before performing a perfect PK roll, sprinting home. Sakura shook her head. Show off. I wish I could do that. She took what she figured was the normal way down the stairs and made her way home as well. At home, Naruto finally gathered his things together and changed into something casual. He then placed his last two identical, kerosene-laced, jumpsuits in a trash can outside before striking a match and dropping it in it. The contents inside the bin burst into flames with a flare. New day, and new start, huh? He asked himself quietly. Guess so. He walked back into his house and pressed his new outfit before fashioning a small holster inside his weapons pouch for his new tactical weapon. He had a simple dinner before going to bed at 6, just as usual. The chapter end here. Now we will meet with another chapter, so don't forget to subscribe our channel for more content like this.